Yo guys, what is up? I hope you're all doing great. In today's video, we're gonna talk about how to self-study Chinese. I'm gonna walk you through the whole process, show you how I'm studying Chinese. I'm gonna let you know what resources I'm using and in general give you tips on how to self-study Chinese. I actually decided to get back to studying Chinese a while ago because I have a book about China coming up. Wait, let me show you the book. This is the book that I wrote about the time that I used to live in Shanghai, hence the name, I lived in Shanghai. At the time you're watching this video, the book might be out, so if it is, I'll link it down below. It's available on Amazon, both as an ebook and in a paper format. Just to give you a quick background, I used to study Chinese at Fudan University in Shanghai, and then later on at Copenhagen Business School. Like, I didn't even go to Copenhagen University. So I do have some like traditional education background that I'm definitely like still using, but nowadays I don't live in China anymore. I have a full-time job, meaning I just don't have much time. So I think this video will be especially helpful for those of you that, just like me, don't have much time in general, but still want to learn some Chinese, and you want to do it in like easy, not a very time consuming, and also not a very expensive way. So what I use to self-study Chinese can be pretty much like divided into 3 categories. So number 1 is the HSK book. Number 2 are the applications. I use ChineseSkill and Pleco. And number 3 is pretty much the internet, or like YouTube and Bilibili, pretty much. The first thing you should be doing if you want to self-study a language is to set yourself some goals and clear structure. I think it's very difficult to study something by yourself if you don't have a clear goal in mind and a structure in place for yourself to follow, an easy structure. That's also crucial. My personal goal is to study Chinese for 15 minutes 4 to 5 times per week. You might be thinking that 15 minutes is nothing, but then on the other hand, whenever I'm tired after a long day at work, I probably wouldn't be able to motivate myself to sit down and study if I wouldn't know that it's only 15 minutes, and 15 minutes is really nothing. I mean, when you think about it, we probably spent like 15 minutes brushing our teeth or something. No, I probably don't, because then I wouldn't go to dentist that often. I feel like setting this realistic goal for myself has been the key to my progress, honestly. So the first thing that I do when I sit down for my 15 daily minutes of Chinese is that I use ChineseSkill, which is an app that you have probably heard about if you have been studying Chinese for a while. ChineseSkill is also the sponsor of today's video, so thank you very much to ChineseSkill for working with me. I'm very excited to work with them because I think their app is very helpful. The problem that I have, and I think a lot of other people have, is that we tend to come up with all kinds of excuses why we cannot study. We don't have time, we don't have the right books, we forgot the notebook. So I think getting into this habit of just using the app, even if it's for a couple of minutes, 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever you can squeeze, it's just like a good habit to have, because you should always keep in mind that doing something, doing a little, is better than doing nothing. So the way I have been actually squeezing learning Chinese into my daily schedule is to do it while I commute or when I'm waiting in waiting rooms. So recently I've been going to a lot of like physiotherapy and like speech therapy appointments because I have some health issues, but whatever. The point is that I spend a lot of time in waiting rooms. So whenever I know that I have like 10 minutes or whatever, and I can just open the app and do like a little quiz. ChineseSkill is an app for people from beginner to intermediate level, so I would say that it's perfect for people like me. So what I usually do is that I pick one of the lessons, and what I really like is that they have like sort of real life scenario, like for example checking in at the airport, and I think that's cool because those are like things that you're actually going to use if you go to China. And then each lesson has like listening, speaking, writing exercises. It obviously also gives you all the vocabulary needed. What's also really helpful is that for each lesson you have flashcards option, and I think flashcards are like crucial when you're trying to learn a new language, because whenever I would make those like lists with words, with new characters that I'm learning, I would always almost like memorize the list, you know, and when I would see the words or the characters like not on my own list but like just somewhere else in the text, I would always like be really confused because I got so used to seeing them in certain order. So I think in general using flashcards, whether it is on ChineseSkill or just somewhere else, it's a really good idea. For me, what's really important as well is that I can still practice my listening for this, that this is not only reading, recognizing characters that I know. They're the dangerous ones. In Shanghai, at least on the streets, like if you see a bus, run, because they will like run you over. The thing is that I always had a lot of issues with tones. If you didn't know, there are 5 tones, or technically 4 tones and 1 no tone in Mandarin Chinese. Tones have always been extremely difficult for me. I don't know why. I mean, they are difficult, they are just difficult in general. Another thing that I use as well is their HSK drill, and here you can basically learn all the words needed in the HSK level that you are doing at the moment. So for example, should we go with the travel team again? Let's do the travel thing. So what I actually really like doing is those games, because I kind of like competition, even if it's competition with myself. But basically the app shows you different words in Chinese in this category, and then you have to, you know, pick which one it is. Correct. Honestly, like sometimes... Oof, I didn't know that one. Wrong. Another thing that I do is that every time I do these lessons or I do a game or whatever I do is that I pick one word, like word of the day that I want to learn. And yes, I pick only one word, but of course if you have more time, pick more. What I used to do when I went to university is that I always used to sit down and write the word, like basically write it down like a couple of lines and repeat it again and again. However, I don't really do that anymore. I don't do that anymore because I am not really focusing on learning how to write in Chinese. I mean, writing in hand. I'm fine with writing on the computer. So of course that depends on what your learning goals are. But if you do want to practice writing Chinese characters, I would highly recommend you an app called Scritter. It's a good app for practicing your stroke order and just in general writing. So when I do pick my word of the day, what I basically do is like I obviously write it down in my notebook and then I read it out loud. I repeat it to myself and I try to make 3 sentences with that word. And I think this is a very crucial thing for anyone trying to learn a language, is that don't focus only on learning new words, on learning vocabulary. What's actually the most important thing about learning a language is learning how to use words in a context, in sentences, in different sentences. I think it's much better strategy to maybe learn less words, but learn how to use those words in a context. My neighbor is staring at me. Well, you're living next to a YouTuber now. Get used to this. If your Chinese is still not good enough so you are able to come up with new sentences by yourself, what I do is I often use Pleco. Pleco is another app that I can very highly recommend. It's basically a Chinese English dictionary and it's free. You can use it without internet. So it's like the #1 app for every foreigner in China probably. I mean, beside WeChat, obviously, beside WeChat. When you look up a word on Pleco, it will show you sentences examples. So that's what I often do with my word of the day. I read the sentences, and also I always do it out loud, because one thing is that I kind of want to just get used to hearing myself speaking Chinese again. And in general, I think that knowing a language or understanding a language is one thing, and being able to actually speak that language is a completely different thing. That's why I kind of try to speak to myself as much as possible. Of course, it's not the same as speaking to another human being, but that's what I can do by myself. However, when I was in China, I used to have a language partner, so that's definitely something I would very highly recommend. There are plenty of places online where you can get a Chinese language partner. So if you're serious about learning Chinese, that's also like a #1 thing I would recommend you to do. Get yourself a language partner, get yourself someone you can talk to, because learning new words, sentences, all these things, like, it's just one thing, but being actually able to understand someone who's speaking Chinese to you is a completely another thing, especially if you're studying Chinese not in China. I think it's very important. Actually, that brings us to another point. yeah, listen to as much Chinese as you can. Surround yourself with Chinese. So what I do is that I watch videos in Chinese either on YouTube or on Bilibili, and I do think that this is something you should be doing even if you don't understand what they're saying. I often watch videos that I don't understand much. Sometimes I understand some single words, sometimes I understand some sentences I don't understand, but I still think that listening to Chinese, even if you don't understand much, is one of the most important things if you are actually serious about learning it. So try to listen to Chinese music. If you're more advanced, of course, listen to some Chinese podcasts. Just do whatever you can do to sort of incorporate Chinese into your daily life. Even if you're doing something else, let's say you're doing dishes and you're just like listening to something in Chinese, I think this is, at least for me, is very helpful because it still subconsciously makes my brain work and be like, oh, this word I actually understand. Like, what is this word? Maybe I will look it up, you know? Let me know in the comments if you have some good tips or advice for people who want to self-study Chinese. If you know of any good apps or any resources that people can use, it would be great if you shared it in the comments. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel or give this video a like, and I hopefully see you soon.